The night began like any other Thursday, quiet, predictable and heavy, with the kind of silence that fills the space between two people pretending not to drift apart. Olivia said she had a business dinner, her voice smooth but distant, like a rehearsed performance. I kissed her cheek, and for a brief second, the warmth in her skin betrayed the chill in her eyes. Hours later, I sat alone, nursing a glass of untouched whiskey, when my phone blinked with a new voicemail. The message wasn't from her. It was from a waiter. His voice trembling, apologetic. "Sir, I think you should know. She didn't come alone." My heart stuttered. Every word felt like glass against my ribs. I replayed it again and again, until disbelief turned into something darker. I need to know why. I told myself it could be nothing. A misunderstanding, a misplaced assumption. But denial is a fragile lie that cracks under pressure. By 10:30, the rain had stopped, and I was already driving toward the restaurant. The city lights blurred through the windshield, neon reflections bleeding into one another. I could still hear the waiter's voice in my head, soft but unshakable. I rehearsed what I'd say if I saw her. Something calm, rational, but anger doesn't wait for logic. It burns fast, consuming the space where patience used to live. Every red light felt like mockery, every honk like laughter. By the time I saw the restaurant's gold-lit sign, my hands were shaking. I wasn't sure if I wanted the truth, or just the satisfaction of catching her in it. The restaurant looked different at night. Elegant, cold, the kind of place that sells intimacy by the glass. Inside, laughter floated like perfume. I watched from the sidewalk, hidden behind a row of cars, and saw her before she saw me. Olivia, laughing, head tilted toward a man I didn't recognize. Mid-40s, sharp suit, confidence radiating like heat. Her hand brushed his wrist. Not an accident. I couldn't have turned away right then. But betrayal demands witnesses, even if the only one is yourself. My breath fogged the window as I leaned closer. She smiled in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. Free, dangerous, alive. The waiter who'd called me appeared from the kitchen doors, younger than I expected, nervous. His eyes met mine for a fleeting second, then flicked toward her table. That tiny gesture sealed everything. I didn't storm in, didn't shout her name. Instead, I waited, watched, observed the choreography of lies, the way she leaned in when he spoke, the way his hand lingered near hers but didn't touch. Every movement felt rehearsed, familiar, deadly precise. For the first time, I realized this wasn't spontaneous. It had rhythm. It had history. When they finally stood to leave, I didn't follow right away. I stayed until the laughter around me dulled into a hum, until I could breathe again. The waiter walked past me on his way out. His eyes met mine once more. "I'm sorry," he murmured, barely audible over the rain. I nodded, because what else could I do? The truth was out, and the silence that followed felt heavier than any confrontation could. As I stepped into the night, the voicemail replayed one last time in my head. That same trembling voice, that same impossible sentence. She didn't come alone. But now I knew who she'd come for. The next morning, sunlight pierced through the blinds like an accusation. The air was thick with the stale scent of whiskey and answered questions. I sat at the edge of the bed, phone in hand, scrolling through her messages. Mundane, perfectly curated lies. Running late. Don't wait up. Love you. 3 words that suddenly felt like smoke. The human mind searches for logic in betrayal, as if reason could patch the wound. But betrayal doesn't reason. It simply replaces what's real with what's convenient. I replayed the voicemail once more, not to confirm, but to memorize. It became a mantra, a rhythm that reminded me I wasn't losing my mind. Just everything else. Olivia came home before noon, her steps light, almost careless. She greeted me with the same warmth she'd always used. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're up early," she said. I watched her hang her coat. every motion deliberate, precise. I could smell the faint cologne that wasn't mine. "Business dinner go well?" I asked. She froze for half a heartbeat, then smiled again. "You know how these things are." I nodded, though I didn't. The silence that followed was a new kind of violence, not loud, but cutting. Her reflection in the kitchen window looked like a stranger's. Later that day, I drove aimlessly through the city. The world outside seemed indifferent. People laughing, children chasing pigeons, life moving forward while mine stood still. I parked near the river, stared at the rippling surface, and tried to remember the last time I'd truly trusted anyone. Memories are strange things. They lie in wait, then ambush you with clarity. I remembered our first date. Her red dress, the rain, the way she said my name like it meant something. Now all I could hear was the echo of that waiter's voice. She didn't come alone. Maybe that's all betrayal is. The collapse of a memory you once believed in. By evening, I decided to confront the only person who'd given me a truth. The waiter. The restaurant was quieter now, emptied of its glamour. He was cleaning tables when I walked in, startled but not surprised. "I shouldn't have called," he said immediately. "It wasn't my place." I told him it was. His hands shook as he wiped the counter, eyes darting between the empty chairs. "She comes here often," he murmured, voice low. "Always with him. Same table." The words fell like stones. There was no shock left, only confirmation. The death of doubt. I left him a tip I didn't mean to, walked out before he could apologize again. That night, Olivia slept beside me as if nothing had changed. Her breathing soft, steady, an unsettling symphony of innocence. I watched the rise and fall of her chest, wondered if guilt ever kept her awake. In the dark, her face looked peaceful, almost childlike. I reached out, fingers hovering inches from her hair, but stopped. Touching her now felt like touching a stranger. Somewhere between the voicemail and the silence, something in me had broken quietly. Not a snap, but a slow, irreversible shift. Betrayal doesn't destroy you all at once. It erodes, grain by grain, until what's left is unrecognizable, even to yourself. The morning after, I couldn't stand the silence anymore. It clung to the walls, to my thoughts, to her perfume that still lingered in the air. Olivia moved around the house like nothing had shifted, humming softly, pouring coffee, scrolling through her phone. Every ordinary gesture felt weaponized. I studied her face as if searching for a confession written between her freckles. She caught me staring and smiled. "You look like you didn't sleep." I wanted to say I didn't, but instead I asked, "Who was he?" Her expression didn't falter. Not immediately. Then, a slight twitch in her lip. "Who?" she asked, too evenly. That single syllable confirmed everything. Lies don't need proof. They just need repetition. She left for work soon after, leaving behind her half-finished cup and the faint sound of her heels fading down the hallway. I sat alone, staring at the lipstick mark on the rim of her mug, a single trace of intimacy, fragile evidence of something that used to mean safety. I picked up the cup, turned it slowly in my hands, then placed it back exactly as she had left it. It felt like I was preserving a crime scene. The house was too quiet. I found myself replaying every moment of our relationship. The first lies, the half-truths disguised as kindness. Maybe I had missed the signs because I wanted the story to stay beautiful. But beauty, I've learned, can hide rot better than anything else. I called her office around noon. The receptionist said she wasn't in, had called in sick. I didn't remember her mentioning that. My stomach turned cold. I checked the GPS app Wad once shared, back when trust was easy. A small blue dot blinked on the screen, nowhere near her office. Across town, near a hotel. The logic of betrayal is terrifyingly simple. What you fear most is often exactly what's happening. My fingers tightened around the phone. For a moment, I considered not knowing. Ignorance, after all, is painless until it ends. But I was long past that mercy. The hotel was quiet, understated, a place meant for discretion. The kind of place that doesn't ask questions. I waited in the car, engine off, watching the revolving door spin guests in and out of temporary lives. Then I saw her, Olivia, in a dark coat, hair pinned up, her face half hidden by oversized sunglasses. Beside her, the same man from the restaurant. They didn't speak as they entered. They didn't need to. The distance between them was practiced, intentional, lovers fluent in secrecy. My throat tightened, but my hands were steady. Rage had burned away hours ago. What remained was clarity. The cold, surgical kind. I didn't follow them inside. Instead, I sat there until my reflection in the windshield felt foreign. It's strange how betrayal changes what mirrors show you. You start seeing yourself as a bystander in your own life. After an hour, they emerged, her laughter faint even through the glass. They kissed, quick and certain. My chest went still. She didn't even look around. No guilt, no hesitation. Just the comfort of routine. As their car pulled away, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't angry anymore. I was empty. And sometimes emptiness is the most dangerous feeling of all, because it demands to be filled with something. When Olivia came home that night, she looked radiant. The kind of glow that doesn't come from fluorescent office lights or long meetings. "Rode?" she asked, her tone casual, rehearsed. I watched her kick off her heels, pour herself a glass of wine, and hum the same song she always did when she wanted the silence to seem normal. "Where were you?" I asked quietly. The question froze her mid-sip. Her eyes darted. Quick, almost imperceptible. Before she smiled, "You're starting to sound paranoid." I stepped closer, the space between us shrinking. "Then tell me I'm wrong." The pause that followed wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. When she finally spoke, it wasn't denial. It was deflection. "You don't trust me anymore." And that somehow hurt more than the lie. The argument began quietly. As all catastrophic things do. Words like trust and respect got thrown around, fragile things breaking in the air. She accused me of spying. I accused her of pretending. At some point, her voice cracked. Not from guilt, but exhaustion. "Do you think you own me?" she snapped. The words echoed through the room like thunder. I didn't respond. I just stared at her. The version of her I'd built in my mind collapsing piece by piece. When she finally turned away, it wasn't in defeat. It was relief. That's when I realized she wasn't afraid of losing. She'd already left long before tonight. After she stormed out, the door's slam left a silence that seemed to hum. I stood alone in the wreckage of our conversation. Wine stains like blood across the carpet, her perfume still lingering in the air like an accusation. I thought about chasing her, demanding more lies until one felt like truth. But I didn't move. Instead, I replayed every moment, every denial, and realized something grimly liberating. I no longer needed her confession. The truth had already spoken through the pauses, the half-looks, the carelessness of her deceit. Sometimes, not knowing why is cleaner than hearing the reason. Because reasons make you forgive. And forgiveness is just another kind of weakness. Midnight found me in the car again, driving aimlessly through the city. The radio played static between songs. White noise for a mind unraveling. I parked outside the same hotel, headlights off, engine humming low. Part of me expected to see them again, expected the betrayal to repeat itself like a looped film reel. But the entrance was empty, only reflections of neon signs flickering on wet pavement. I realized I wasn't there to catch her this time. I was there to confront something else. The part of me that still needed to be loved by the woman who'd already buried us both. When I returned home, the house was dark. She was there, sitting in the corner of the living room, still in her coat, glass of untouched wine beside her. Her eyes were swollen, not from guilt, but exhaustion. "I didn't want it to be this way," she whispered. "Then why was it?" I asked. Silence again. That old familiar ghost. She looked up finally, her face illuminated by the soft flicker of the streetlight outside. "Because I wanted to feel alive again. No defense, no apology, just the kind of honesty that comes too late to save anything." I stood there, nodding slowly, the truth finally heavy enough to set me free. Days bled together after that night. Olivia and I coexisted like strangers who shared the same dream, but never spoke of it. The silence between us became its own language, one built on avoidance, unfinished sentences, and long stares across the breakfast table. I started noticing details I'd never seen before. Her new perfume, her changed passwords, the subtle distance in how she said my name. The more I tried to let it go, the more it grew. The need to know, the compulsion to track her movements, to prove that my pain wasn't madness. I told myself it was about truth, but it wasn't. It was about control. The desperate need to reclaim something that had already slipped beyond my reach. By the third day, I'd installed a GPS tracker on her car, justified it as protection. The lie came too easily. Watching that blinking dot move across the map gave me a strange sense of comfort, like controlling the uncontrollable. Each evening, she'd return home, her routine flawless, unbroken. But one night, the dot paused. A place I didn't recognize. A boutique hotel on the edge of downtown. My pulse quickened. I waited, staring at that glowing mark, until it moved again, back toward home. When she walked in hours later, smiling faintly, I said nothing. I just looked at her and realized how obsession feels, eerily like devotion. Only sharper, more poison. The next evening, I followed her. The city was alive with Friday night laughter, but every sound felt muffled under the roar of my own heartbeat. I stayed several cars behind, headlights dimmed, the rhythm of her taillights pulsing like a heartbeat I couldn't escape. She stopped outside a small gallery, not a hotel this time. Inside, paintings glowed under track lights, and the man from before stood waiting, hands in pockets, smile patient. They didn't touch, but their proximity told the whole story. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. Some betrayals are clearest when seen through glass. When I got home, I deleted the tracker app, smashed the phone it ran on. The act felt cleansing, like cutting a vein to let the poison out. But obsession doesn't vanish. It transforms. I started writing down every detail I remembered. What she wore, where she went, how she smiled when lying. The notebook filled quickly, pages of madness disguised as evidence. Some nights I'd read them back to myself, whispering her name like a ritual. The truth had long been revealed, but I couldn't stop chasing the echoes of it. I wasn't trying to expose her anymore. I was trying to make sense of myself in her absence, even while she still slept beside me. One night, I woke to find her watching me. She stood by the doorway, eyes unreadable, the faintest smile at the corner of her lips. "It's like you finally stopped pretending." I didn't answer. Maybe she saw the truth. That I wasn't pretending anymore, just surviving inside the ruins of what we used to be. She stepped closer, placed a hand on my chest. Her touch was familiar, but her warmth felt foreign. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel rage, just a quiet, aching understanding that some loves don't end. They just decay until they're unrecognizable. I stopped sleeping. Nights became long corridors of thought, looping endlessly through what-ifs and should-haves. The need to confront her lover gnawed at me like hunger. It wasn't jealousy anymore. It was something colder, mechanical. I searched his name online, learned more about him than I knew about myself. Married once, divorced, wealthy, untouchable. He lived in a high-rise overlooking the river, glass walls reflecting the city, too blind to care. I told myself I just wanted to see him, to look into the eyes of the man who dismantled my life with casual charm. But beneath that lie, another truth waited. I wanted him to feel it. The loss, the hollow ache, the weight of being replaced. The following evening, I followed him. He walked like someone who believed in his own safety. Unhurried, confident, I stayed in the crowd, invisible. He stopped by a small cafe, ordered espresso, and sat alone, scrolling through his phone. I studied him the way one studies an opponent. Gestures, habits, weaknesses. There was nothing extraordinary about him, and that made it worse. This was the man she'd chosen over me. Ordinary, replaceable, forgettable. Yet somehow, in her eyes, he was everything I wasn't. Rage simmered beneath the calm. I imagined walking in, saying his name, watching recognition bloom in fear. But I didn't. Not yet. Some punishments need precision, not passion. Days passed, each one sharpening my resolve. I began sending small reminders, things only she would understand. A bouquet of white lilies at her office, her favorite song playing on her car radio without her turning it on. She didn't confront me. She didn't have to. Every gesture was a warning, a message wrapped in nostalgia. I wanted her to know I hadn't disappeared, that I was still part of her story, haunting the edges of her choices. Guilt became my new intimacy. I could feel her unease growing, and for a brief, dangerous moment, it felt like love again. Because at least she was still feeling something for me. That night, she called me. Her voice was calm, but her breathing gave her away. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Doing what?" I replied. A pause, then, "You know what?" I almost laughed. The irony of being accused by the person who started the fire. "I just wanted to remind you," I said, "that some things don't stay buried." The silence that followed stretched thin, trembling like a wire ready to snap. "Please stop," she whispered finally. But the word please wasn't a plea. It was fear wearing civility's mask, and for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. The next morning, the news broke. A car accident near the river. His car, the older man. Police said it looked like he lost control on the wet curve. I watched the footage in silence, coffee cooling in my hands. Olivia sat beside me, pale, motionless. "Do you think?" she started, but couldn't finish. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Some questions are meant to live unanswered, suspended between guilt and relief. As the reporter's voice droned on, I felt the weight of retribution settle quietly in my chest. Not victory, not satisfaction, just silence, deep and complete. The kind of silence that follows after a storm, when all that's left is what's broken. In the days that followed, the world pretended to move on. The news cycle spun, the city breathed, and life carried on as if a man hadn't just vanished into a river bend. Olivia barely spoke. She drifted through the house like a ghost, her eyes hollowed by something deeper than grief. I watched her from the kitchen doorway, the woman I once knew dissolving beneath silence. I should have felt vindicated, but all I felt was the echo of what I'd become. The revenge hadn't filled me. It had emptied me further. Each night I found myself staring at the mirror, waiting for guilt to surface. But it didn't. Only the reflection of a man I no longer recognized. Eyes calm, hands steady, soul unmoored. Olivia avoided me now, but not out of anger. Out of fear. She flinched at small sounds, checked the locks twice each night. I noticed the change in her breathing whenever she sensed me nearby. It wasn't hatred I saw in her eyes anymore. It was recognition. She finally saw what she had built, what she had awakened. One evening, she whispered, "Did you have something to do with it?" I didn't answer. My silence was confession enough. Tears welled in her eyes. Not for him, but for herself. For the realization that the man who once loved her would rather destroy her world than live outside. That's when I understood. Retribution never ends clean. It loops, feeding on itself, turning love into shadow. The police came once, routine questions, polite concern. "You were seen in the area that night," one of them said. I smiled faintly, offered coffee, answered every question with careful precision. They left with nothing, and the door closed with a soft finality that sounded almost like absolution. But absolution is an illusion. Every night I heard the crash replaying in my mind, metal twisting, glass breaking, the silence after impact. I began to wonder if it had been an accident after all. Maybe I hadn't touched the brakes. Maybe I had. The line blurred with every sleepless hour. Memory is a fragile witness. It says whatever the heart demands to survive. Weeks later, Olivia left. No note, no goodbye. Just an empty closet and the faint scent of her perfume clinging to the sheets. I didn't chase her. There was nothing left to say. The house felt larger without her, hollow and echoing. I walked from room to room like an archivist cataloging a life that never truly existed. Her laughter lingered in the walls, her absence in the silence. In the evenings, I'd sit by the window watching headlights smear across the wet glass. Sometimes I imagined she'd return, step through the door, and say it was all a mistake. But lies only haunt those who still believe in redemption, and I had long since buried that luxury. Months later, the voicemail still played in my head. That trembling voice, that single phrase that started it all. She didn't come alone. I sometimes replayed it just to remember who I used to be before the storm. The whiskey glass sat in the same place, the clock still ticking at 9:47, as if time had looped, trapping me in that first night forever. I didn't feel remorse anymore, only an ache shaped like memory. Outside, the rain began again, steady, patient, cleansing nothing. I raised the glass to my reflection and whispered, "Neither did I." The truth, I realized, was never about her dinner or his death. It was about the man I became when I stopped needing proof and started needing punishment.